how I first got in touch with Jeff, everyone. I first contacted Jeff back in March of last year to see if he could answer quite an unusual question about bald eagles for a friend of mine in Alberta. And after Jeff kindly answered that question, he actually offered to drive up from Point Roberts to Vancouver, this was pre-COVID, to give this presentation in person. But then coincidentally, only about a week after that, the COVID restrictions were put in place. So we've had to postpone his presentation until now, thanks to Zoom. So yeah, Jeff, thank you very much last year for offering to eventually do this. Jeff has been monitoring the bald eagles of Point Roberts for 13 years now. There's about 15 active breeding territories there, and his research has involved in-depth interactions and communication with 3 of the breeding pairs. He teaches people about eagle behavior and how to best view, photograph, and live around them. He also touches on eagle history in the Salish Sea and some of the issues eagles face today. He got involved with eagles on a full-time basis in 2007 when he noticed nobody at Point Roberts was looking out for them and that there were many questions which didn't seem to have answers. He realized their eagles needed help and found most people knew nothing about them, and so really didn't understand his concern. So in the course of finding answers and help for their eagles, he was drawn into their lives and found them fascinating subjects. And he now feels it's important to share his story and long journey in understanding exactly how eagles live. So Jeff, I will now hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's turnout tonight, and it's always interesting that Point Roberts, you know, because of the border situation, there's often not many people here, which is exactly what eagles need, because, you know, they're looking to get away from people and they need the trees. And so I'm gonna switch over to some of my PowerPoint presentations, and some of the slides I'll skip by, so don't worry about that, because I don't have the time to talk about all of them. But I'm gonna try to cover all bases, and my website is eagleskynet.com. That's SKYEEAGLE net.com. And I have a video series that a new one that I'm gonna be starting there. And just a couple weeks ago, I rescued an eagle that got in a big fight here. And used to be, I would call OWL, which is the Raptor Center there in Delta, I'm sure you guys are aware of.
Yeah.
And they would send I would go make sure, yeah, the eagle's in trouble, it needs to be picked up. And then I would watch over it until they came, and then they'd pick it up. Well, now with the border, I have to be the one carry the eagle. So a couple of weeks ago, I've got this eagle wrapped in a blanket in my arms, literally carrying it across the border. And the eagle had been pretty calm the whole time in the car ride to the border. But as soon as I started to carry it into Canada, it decided it wanted to get free. And I was amazed at the strength of this eagle, because it had its wings folded, and it started. So I'm 6'6", 260 pounds. I'm a pretty strong person. And I had to use all my strength to hold that eagle. And then Colin with Al was waiting there with a dog crate, and then we loaded it into that. And so
you did have some assistance with duct tape.
Yeah. So what we learned is you wrap the eagle in a beach towel or blanket, then you put duct tape around, and that immobilizes its wings. So that keeps, until we can get it into a crate. And so now it's in ICU at Owl, and it has a big gash on its leg. So its wings are okay. So it'll eventually be released. And so the incidence of eagles, last year, Owl admitted 200 eagles. And in the last 3 years, I've rescued 3 eagles, and I've had to bury a couple other ones that died. So what people don't realize is the Fraser Valley is the greatest urban eagle habitat in the world. I mean, there are, I'm sure you guys know who David Hancock is, the David Hancock Foundation, and he monitors all the eagles in the Fraser Valley. And he told me there's probably over 500 nesting pairs now. And so to put that in perspective, there's only 7 states in the United States that have more eagles than that in the whole state. So there's been a big increase of eagles. And so it really, so anyway, let me start my presentation. So, okay. Yeah. Okay, so this is, of course, Mount Baker in the distance. This is at low tide. You'll see the adult eagle low in the frame there. That's one of the resident pairs that I've known for over a decade. And in the background, those are juvenile eagles. And so the one thing that COVID has helped reinforce is, people are aware of having to keep a distance from each other. Well, that's how eagles live all their lives. So I tell people, when I first started monitoring eagles, I contacted the guy in Oregon, Frank Isaacs, who ran the bald eagle monitoring program for 35 years down there. And so there's a protocol for eagles and how to act around them. And one of them is you should observe them from 400 to 800 meters away. And when you're that far away, a couple things happen. They're not going to feel threatened by you. So and that's why I tell people to get a good spotting scope or binoculars, and then you can watch them in their natural behavior. If you try to get within 300 or 400 feet or closer, then the eagles are just going to go fly away and hide, and you're not going to experience eagles. You're not going to see them do some of their natural things. So anyway, this is the eagle Talia, and this is a picture. She came out, she's on a rock probably 15 feet from me. And she was the eagle that taught me that eagles get to know you and they remember you. And so I tell people, it's very important how you act around an eagle the first time you meet them, because they're going to remember you. And if you do something they don't like, then they're always going to avoid you. But it takes a long time to build up trust. And but eventually they'll come, and the eagles, they'll fly to me. And I learned the best way was to set up about, like I say, 400, 800 meters away. And I would just either sit down or sit on a log or something. And the first thing I tell people is, when you're around an eagle, you don't want to face the eagle and stare at it, because that's an aggressive thing that they're going to react to. It's like, oh, this person is staring at me, and so that's going to make them afraid of you. So you want to be there and act like, I'm just here to see what's going on, just like the eagles are. I'm not here for the eagle. So what I'll do is I'll look straight out at the water, facing the water, and then I'll turn and look sideways at the eagle. And if I have a camera or a spotting scope, I won't sit there and just keep it constantly on them. I'll look at them and then I'll look away. I'll look at them and I'll look away. And so what that does is that helps relax the eagle, and they remember that. and they see that you're making a conscious effort not to disturb them, and that you respect them. And that's kind of how and it just kind of grew from there. And then once one eagle accepts you, then the eagles they know will accept you, because so eagles, I'll show you some videos in a little while. And it's hard for me to explain, like when I'm around an eagle, I can feel it. I can feel it inside. And the only thing I can liken it to, I don't know if you've ever been to like a sporting event or a concert or something, and the crowd's really loud and you can feel the energy. Well, eagles are able to do that to me, just a single eagle. And that's what kind of drew me in and made me curious. How does this bird have this power over me? And the one thing I've noticed in talking to other people is that eagles do have a way of getting inside you and getting your interest and sympathy. And so what we're dealing with now is in about 1917 in Alaska, they put a bounty on eagles because eagles were blamed for the decline of salmon, which wasn't true, but that's the way it went. And so, and it didn't make sense to me because my mother was born in Point Roberts in 1924, and she said she never saw eagles growing up, and I never saw an eagle in Point Roberts till I was in college back in 1978. And when one flew over our house, that was the first time in my life I'd ever seen an eagle. Contrast today, there may be 200 to 300 eagles at Lily Point at one time, and there's, like I said, 15 breeding pairs there. And so it created this, conflict, like, okay, how did that happen? And so what really happened was that the fishermen who fished in Alaska, they would come down here in the winter, and so they would bring a bucket with them. They would shoot the eagles here. And the way you collect your bounty was you cut off the eagle's talons and you turn those in, and that's how they got paid. And so they would have a bucket on their boat, and they'd shoot the eagles and cut off their talons and put in a bucket. And then in the spring, when they go back to Alaska, they turn them in and collect their bounty. So there used to be in the whole Salish Sea between 8,000 and 10,000 eagles. And Washington right now has about 900 pairs, and Vancouver has, 400 to 500 pairs. But back in the early 60s, there was only 3 pairs in all of the Fraser Valley. So it's one of those things that nobody planned, but it happened. And so when eagles see a human, it's just like us now. We see another human, we go, oh, does that human have COVID or not? Well, the eagle looks at us and say, oh, is that person going to shoot me or not? And so one of the things I learned early on was I couldn't use a tripod, because by the time I got a tripod out and set up the camera and did all that, that scared the eagles away. So I had to learn how to handheld or if you set up in one place, eventually after they get to know you, then they'll come to you. But if you're just walking through eagle territory, if you try to use a tripod, you won't get anywhere near them. Here's a shot of some eagles I took at Lily Point. And eagles, of course, they sit in the trees most of the day. So they're grasping their talons around branches. And we've learned from captive eagles that if they don't perch on different sized branches, that it creates problems for their talons. And so the reason when they come and they sit on these rocks, they're stretching out their talons and they're standing on them. And the reason they like to stand in the sandbars is because their big nails that stick out from their talons can go into the sand, and it's more relaxing for them. So that's why I tell people, if you see an eagle on a sandbar, try to stay, a couple hundred yards away from it, and then it's able to. So this is basically the breeding range of eagles in North America. And as you can see, most of it's in Canada and just the northern parts. And eagles get 70% of their diet from fish. And then the other 30% is from waterfowl. Sometimes they'll grab a crab, or if they, see a field mouse somewhere, or a rabbit, once in a while they eat those. But mostly they go after fish. It's what's on the water or in the water. And the reason Lily Point is so attractive to eagles is there's the shallow water there. So it's like fish in a barrel, and especially for juvenile eagles who really haven't developed the skills to fish in deep water, it's easier for them to get fish in the shallow water because the fish have nowhere to go and they can see them. So what this is a map of is the green, of course, is the trees. The black is where there's no trees. The red is where trees have been cut in the last decade, and the blue is where trees have been replanted. These graphs are about 7 or 8 years old, but they haven't really changed that much. So here you see the Fraser Valley, and you can see that the Boundary Bay, there's about a 12-mile stretch of Boundary Bay where there's no trees. And so the eagles come to Point Roberts because we have the trees. You can look, there's a lot of trees over in White Rock, but there's, the shoreline's all solid housing and people. So they can't hang out there. So they come to Point Roberts because they're able to get away from everything. And that's where the sandbar and all the food is. So eagles come to Point Roberts from mostly all around Boundary Bay. There's over 100 nests around Boundary Bay. And when you look at those little green dots, those are usually little cottonwood trees or something, and they're nested in those on the farmland. And here's an even further close up. So when you enter into Point Roberts, the first street that goes along the border is Roosevelt Street. And Teddy Roosevelt actually rescued the people of Point Roberts back in 1908 because the Icelandic settlers came here from Vancouver Island. There was everyone kind of lost their jobs and the economy kind of crashed. So they relocated to Point Roberts and they started these farms. And then the state of Washington decided, well, you people don't own that land, you squatted there. So they were going to kick them off. So they appealed to President Roosevelt in Washington, and he sent an envoy out, and he allowed them to homestead and keep their homes. And so, but President Roosevelt was significant because he was probably the first and only president we've ever had that went out and understood that forests, deer, waterfowl, all the wildlife needs protection. And so there's a whole network of national parks and wildlife refuges up and down the Pacific Flyway and throughout the West that was established by Roosevelt over 100 years ago. And so his thing was, it's a civic responsibility to know the wildlife species that live in your area. And so that was kind of an early inspiration for me, because I saw that now, when I grew up, there were no eagles here, and now there's all these eagles, and no one was protecting them. They were being disrespected. People were destroying their nests, cutting down their nest trees. And the main reason that their population has recovered is we stopped shooting them. As early as 1978, 50% of all dead eagles found were shot. And back in 2013, someone shot 4 eagles on a lake near Seattle. And so this is another teachable moment. There were 7 eagles that were poisoned by a farmer who euthanized horses and then left them in the field where eagles could get to them. And so the eagles came and ate the horses with the tainted meat, and then they got sick. And this happens today with hunters who still use lead ammunition. Mm. The lead ammunition will stay on the ground, or they'll be in the waterfowl that's left behind. The eagle comes and eats it. And I would say maybe 12 to 15 eagles a year are killed in the Fraser Valley from lead poisoning. And I watched one die here in Point Roberts from lead poisoning, and it was absolutely horrific. They start coughing up blood, and it's really, so I'm not, lead ammo has been banned in a lot of places, but people are still using it. So I don't know if you guys have anything to do with raising awareness about that, but that would be something that that's part of the reason that I wanted to meet with your group, is to let you know about some of the things that are happening on your side of the border as well as over here, and that if we work together, we can help mitigate it. And then these are the eagles that were shot in Seattle. It's just very sad. I mean, I can't imagine why someone would want to shoot an eagle, but look what we do to each other. So it's one of the things that in my research I found was that people said, if you're going to follow eagles, you need to be able to handle extremes. And I'll attest that that's very true. I mean, they'll sit there and they'll fly over you and make you feel wonderful one day, and then you'll come across one that's injured or dead the next day, and it's very difficult to take. So anyway, you can see, you're going to see in these pictures, I get very close to these eagles, and it's because these eagles know me. I mean, I walk the shorelines and eagle habitats of Point Roberts at least 200 days a year for the last 7 years. And before that, I spent like weeks at a time out there with them. So, and once they get to know you, so this is a young eagle. You can see it has the black in its beak. It has the multicolored belly feathers, and it still has the dark head. They don't get their full white feathers till they're 5 years old. And a lot of times if you go to Lily Point or something, you won't see the eagles, but they see you. And they have sentries that watch the trails. And as soon as someone comes, they'll let out a little warning call to the other eagles to let them know. And they're the masters of sight lines. There'll be just a tunnel of vision where they can see you in a certain part of the trail, but you look up and you can't see them. It's kind of like when you're behind a window looking through the blinds, the person out in the street can't see you, but you can see them. Well, they have the same advantage in the trees, and that's why eagles need trees. And again, this is the Talia, who's part of the Marina pair. And eagles hate fireworks. And in the United States, it's illegal to have any kind of fireworks within a mile of an active nest, but that's not really been enforced. So it's something we struggle with here. This is the Marina Nest here. And what happened here was the Marina started putting trailers and did all kinds of activity here. And they were forced to abandon this nest, and they built another nest about a quarter mile away. again, that's something that's supposed to be illegal, but it's something that hasn't been enforced. So pedestrian activity is the most frequent cause of interrupting nesting activity, and anything less than 700 feet negatively affects nest success. So if an eagle is sitting on an egg, or it has a little eaglet in its nest, and you get too close, the adult's going to fly away. And in that time it flies away, the egg can get too cold, and then the chick will die, or the eaglet will get cold and catch a cold and get sick and die. So I tell people, find out where the nests are, and it's very important that you never call attention to the nest. And what I do if I'm walking within 200 to 300 feet of a nest, I won't face it, I won't look at it, I'll just walk right on by. And because eagles, once you see an eagle's nest, the thing is huge. So, but it's amazing how many people never see them, because in the spring they're covered with leaves and they're hard to see sometimes. And so this is Talia again. I'll be out on the sandbar and she'll come down and she'll land 20 feet from me. And the reason she's taking off here is another person is approaching from behind me. And as soon as he got up there, then she took off. But that's called flushing. When you make an eagle fly away, that's called flushing. And so the goal is not to do that, because eagles only have a limited amount of energy. And there was a study done on eagles, like how much they could eat in a day and how much energy they could get from that, because those big wings they have take a lot of strength and power. I compare it to a cheetah. I'm sure you've seen the images of a cheetah running down a gazelle or something, and cheetahs can run 65 miles an hour, but they can only do that 2 or 3 times a day. Well, the same thing is for the eagle. The eagle can run down any bird. They catch red-tailed hawks, they catch all kinds of waterfowl, and they have these powerful wings, but they're only allowed to fly 28 minutes in a day. And how they kind of manage that is they break them down into 4 to 5 minute intervals. So if they want to go out hunting for food, if they haven't found anything after 3 or 4 minutes, then they fly back to their perch and they'll wait later in the day. Now, other thing is, so eagles, the best time to see eagles is within an hour of sunrise, and then within 90 minutes of sunset, because what they do is they save their energy most of the day. And if they have energy left over, then they'll go out and they'll start playing later in the day, or if there's a wind. But if there's no wind at all and they have to use all their flying, that they'll usually sit in a tree. But here, here you see the fish is falling out of the juvenile's hand, and so they play keep away. They play kind of a form of touch football, and they chase each other and they play, and it's part of keeping their muscles in shape for if they have to get into a conflict with another eagle. And this is why you want to stay like 300-400 yards away from eagles and just sit down and relax and wait. And if you have patience, then they'll see that you're settled in, you're not going to become a threat, and then they'll relax and they'll go out and play. And so a scene like this, you'll be lucky to see that maybe once or twice in a month. But once you see it, then it makes it a lot easier to try to go out and have patience to do it again. So part of what I teach is kind of the native spirituality for animals, and we have it too. And the eagles, they woken something inside of me, and they made me feel things that I never experienced in my life. And so when I watched eagles, you also, I'm sure all of you birders know this, you go out to watch a duck or something, and then you'll see, oh, well, there's a loon. And so you kind of see how all the birds start interacting with each other. And so it teaches you, you know, about nature, and you see how we interfere with their lives. And so, and that's what we need to do a better job, and what we're struggling with now is we've overfished, we have too many boats in the water, we have too many people on the shoreline. And it's amazing that if you just give them a little bit of space, that they can still function. But it only takes one person to change that.
Wow.
So this is the female Athena. She's part of the Lily Point pair, and I'm standing maybe 15 feet from her, and you can see by her head that her feathers are flat on her head, which means she's relaxed. If she didn't know me, she would have flown away in an instant. But and to stand there 15 feet from the eagle and look in its eyes like this it's truly amazing. And so, you know, I tell people, you know, you try to identify where you go, find where the nest is, and because the pairs usually hang out by themselves or with each other. And this time of year, we have all the wintering eagles that come down from up north, and they hang out at the dump and the fertilizer place across the street, and that's why you see 1,000 eagles, and you'll see 20 eagles in a tree. Well, those are all transient eagles. And so anyway, this I have this experience with an eagle maybe a couple times a month. And let's see. This is a map of all the different nests that are in Point Roberts, and you could see all the extensive trees and that we have along the shoreline, and that's what eagles need. And then sometimes a year you'll see the eagles they'll all be flying together, and I have some and there's Lily Point there. So what makes Lily Point such a special habitat is the predominant wind comes out of the south. So it hits these 200-foot cliffs and it creates an updraft. And so the eagles just have to stick their wings out like a kite, and it holds them in the air, and they don't expend any more energy than sitting in a tree. And so that's why the eagles come here, and why it's such a great eagle habitat. Okay, this isn't the other pair I've been following. This eagle's nest tree is in a development called Seabright. And back in 2007, well, going back further than that, when I first saw an eagle's nest was about 1995. And it was in the winter like this, and I looked up, and you can see this massive, I mean, it made me laugh because it's just a nest that's on a ridiculous scale. And so I would come up here, my parents have a summer place, and I usually came up here in the summer. And once in a while I'd come in the winter during the holidays. And so one day I was walking along the beach, and this nest was gone. One of the developers had destroyed the nest because they wanted to put a stairway there, and nobody knew about that. And so anyway, that's one of the things that happens. Let's see. shoot, shovel, and shut up. Was the mantra of farmers who blamed eagles for killing their sheep or calves or whatever. They would shoot them and bury them before anyone was able to see them. And there used to be 20 to 30,000 eagles that were killed over a 20-year period in the Midwest and California. And this is a perch tree that's just maybe a quarter mile down from the nest I just showed you. And what eagles do is they sit on top of these trees and they have their white heads there. And so any visiting eagles that come through, they immediately see them and they know that this eagle has a territory. And the other thing that happens is they only have certain trees they nest in. So, I mean, perch in. So if a visiting eagle comes in their territory and they're sitting in a tree they don't perch in, then the resident adult knows immediately that that's not his mate, it's an intruder. So it's one of the ways they are able to protect their territory. And the nest and Point Roberts are only a half mile to 3/4 of a mile apart, which is a density unheard of in the rest of the Western United States. Usually they're 1 mile to 2 miles, sometimes 3 miles apart. And the reason they're closer here is there's so much more food and better cover for them. So anyway, this is the stairway. You can see the eagles at the top of that big cottonwood tree. And there was a nest in that tree. Well, now that tree has been rendered useless because that's the main entry to the beach for the subdivision. So they've effectively destroyed this as a nest tree. And again, that is supposed to be illegal, but it wasn't enforced. So this is part of what first got me involved with the eagles in Point Roberts. So things that can be done is you can leave a small landscape buffer around the tree. And a lot of times that's enough for an eagle, but they don't like new things coming into their territory after they've already established a nest. So they abandoned this nest and went down to the other one that I just showed you a few slides ago. That's maybe a quarter mile away. And this is the Reef Tavern, and this is the pair that lives over there. And you'll see that extension, that T extension. Well, if the eagle's wings, the reason eagles get electrocuted is they have 7-foot wingspan. So they touch both wires. So when they do that, it closes a circuit and they get electrocuted. So one of the things we've done, and you'll see a lot of these in Delta now and on 56 going towards 217, we put extensions up so the eagles sit up there away from the wires, and that way they don't get electrocuted. So if you ever see an eagle that's sitting on a pole that doesn't have one of these extensions, let the authorities know or let the power company know, and they'll come put one of these on. Because eventually, if it doesn't get one of these on, an eagle is going to get electrocuted. And this is kind of the attitude that the settlers had 100 years ago, that the eagle was a competition for food, just like the wolves, and so their attitude was kill them whenever you see them. I found, so the other thing I've discovered is that I'm able to communicate with these eagles. They're able to communicate with me. And so I saw this quote, there'll become a time when humans will communicate with certain animals. And so I saw a video, I think, of someone who rescued a lion someone who rescued a wolf, and then they released them back in the wild. And then they went back 5 years later out in the wild. And this lion came up and recognized the person and started, kissing him, and same with the wolf. Well, last year there was an eagle here in Point Roberts that was electrocuted. And luckily it had a fish or something in its talon. And so that object in his talon took the brunt of the charge. And so he was in ECU for 4 months recovering, but he lived, which is really rare because normally they don't. And I was out on the sandbar in South Beach, and I named this eagle Shadow because it still had a dark patch of feathers on its head. And I'm out there walking along the beach, and all of a sudden, here comes Shadow out, and he lands 10 feet from me right on a rock. And let me take his picture, and I talked to him, and then someone else walked up and he flew away. But I had spent maybe 2 hours with this eagle. Well, it stood in a drainage ditch, and I was waiting for Owl to come, and I kept telling it it was going to be okay, it was going to be okay. And we had a release party for it in Maple Beach, and we released the eagle, and so it now remembers me and comes to me whenever. It'll come fly right up to me now too. And so, but I'll get back to that communication thing. It's good. It's a common theme. Basically, this is the pier out on the west side of Point Roberts. You can see the coal terminal there in the distance. And this is a reminder of what the fishing industry used to be. Point Roberts used to be a fishing community. The whole economy was on fish. And they built the fish traps at Lily Point, and they wiped out one of the greatest salmon runs in like 25 years. And if you go there now at Lily Point, you'll see pilings down there, but there used to be a giant cannery there. I'm sure maybe some of you seen the pictures of that. Mm-hmm. But the natives, they used to catch fish at the mouth of the river, and they understood that only so many salmon came through each year. So they figured out that all the salmon took 7 days or so to get through the mouth of the river to go up to spawn. So they would take the first 3 to 4 days and they let all the fish pass. So they knew that a lot of salmon would go spawn and create more fish, and then they would catch the stuff. And that's how they managed fish for the 13,000 years. We came here and we didn't care about that at all. We just saw the fish as money. And then when Canada and the United States made the 49th parallel, the border, and Point Roberts stayed in the United States, it's mainly because we're splitting, because one fish run comes the inside passage around Vancouver Island. The rest of the fish come around the Strait of Juan de Fuca and pass Point Roberts before they go to the Fraser. So we basically split those salmon runs in half, and then we kind of used each other as an excuse to not stop fishing. Oh, well, I'm not going to stop fishing. The Canadians are still fishing. Well, the Canadians say, well, I'm not going to stop. The Americans are still fishing. And so now 10 years ago, there was 10% of the salmon runs left. Now we're down to 4 to 6%. And that's why the orcas are starving. And not only are the numbers down to 4 to 6%, but the size of the salmon are half or less than what they used to be. So not only are there less fish, but the orcas have to catch smaller fish and more of them, which are harder to catch. And they used to have the big Tyee salmon. When you drive in Point Roberts, the name of the road is Tyee. Well, Tyee is the name of the big giant salmons that were 70, 80, 100 pounds. And they've been extinct for decades. And so it's just one of the warning signals that we never heeded and most people weren't aware of. So about 4 years ago, I had a nest cam in one of the nests before the developer took it out because he didn't like the stuff is exposing. But this is the view from that nest tree that I showed you a little bit ago. And so an eagle can see 8 times farther than we can with 5 times the resolution. So we can look out at this water and it sees fish in the water, and so it's up high. It needs it up high, so it uses gravity and takes a beeline right for the fish, and it can be down to that water in a matter of seconds. And I've even seen them look out over a mile, and they'll fly right to a spot a mile out, swoop down, pick up a fish, and come back with it. And even with a spotting scope, I don't see how they can see that fish. So they have amazing vision. So I tell people, if you see an eagle, it's because they've allowed it. That at that point, they've determined you're not a threat yet, because they see you way before you ever see them, of course, unless you have a spotting scope. And I have one little story I like to tell. When I first got my spotting scope, there was the one eagle pair hangs out at the jetty on the marina, on the rocks there. And someone told me that when you look at an eagle through a spotting scope or a rifle scope, they know it. And I thought, oh yeah, right. And so I set up my spotting scope, and as soon as I focused on the eagle pair sitting there, it was like that image went to their brain the same time it went to mine, because they immediately, both of them turned their heads and looked right at me, and they were over a half mile away. So that really stunned me. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna change here. Let's see. I'm going to a different presentation. Hold on a second here. Let's see which one. No, I'm just trying to find the ones with the videos in it. Hold on a second here. That one, is it? No. What the hell? Oh, it's this one, I think. Okay. So this is the juvenile eagle iris, and she's the fledgling of the Marina pair, Talia, the eagle I showed you earlier. And she used to come and sit on this pole outside my window and wait for me to get up in the morning. And she's the one that first kind of clued me in that something was going on and that I needed to pay attention. And so I started following her. And so I learned a lot from her, and learned a lot about what was going on with the eagles because of the things she did. And typically an eagle, if it has a fledgling, then the next year when they lay new eggs and they have a new fledgling, they'll drive the year before's fledgling out of the territory. But because this pair, they had to abandon their nest, like I showed you earlier, they didn't have any eaglets for a couple years, so they never drove her off. And so she hung out by my house, and she made friends with a neighboring fledgling, and they flew by my house all the time. And this is the male from, this was from one of the first eagle tours I did back in 2009. And I had a photographer with me on that. His name is Denny. Can't think of his last name now. And this is a picture from the nest cam I had. This is the mother in the nest. Eagles, you know, they raise their young in the nest, but it also is a secure place for them to go eat food. And then here's a couple fledglings in there. So the adults have to monitor these eagles 24/7, because if they leave, then a crow or anyone can come in and you know, get these chicks in a second. So they can't leave them. Eagles sit on an egg for 35 days, and then it takes 12 weeks from the time they hatch till they're ready to leave the nest. Wow. And when eagles leave the nest, they're actually full grown. And they even look bigger than the adults because their flight feathers are actually longer, so it makes it easier for them to fly. And then when they're a year or 2 years old, they drop those feathers and get shorter, more maneuverable ones. You can see some crab legs in there. And they just leave the fish and the crab legs, so when the eaglet wakes up, it has something to eat. This is a 11-month-old fledgling from Sky and Kite, and probably one of the most beautiful fledglings I've ever seen. It has, see all the white in its feathers? That's very rare. Typically their feathers are really dark their first year, and they don't get white tail feathers till they're 4 or 5 years old. So, and Lenny and his brother, they would follow me. And so I got a lot of great video of them. And there's a mother looking up at an eagle that's intruding, and so she's keeping an eye on it. This is a flight cage that collapsed. Part of my education with eagles involved me getting to know this guy named Jeff Guidry down in Arlington, who rescued an eagle from a golf course with a broken wing and then raised it because it could never fly again. It became an educational bird. And this eagle was in its flight pen like this one, and all of a sudden it stopped eating. And they couldn't figure out why it stopped eating. So they brought it in from the flight cage into the infirmary part of the Raptor Center there. And that night there was a big snowstorm and the whole thing collapsed. And so if it would have been in there, it would have died. So somehow it knew that something dangerous was coming, and it figured out how to manipulate the people there to bring it inside, to move it out of there. And it talked to the eagle in the next flight over, and that eagle stopped eating. They brought in, and then the next day that flight came down as well. So the one word I use for eagles is uncanny. They have abilities. that just defy explanation. But when you're around them long enough, it happens enough to where the word coincidence can't really be used. Another thing Jeff taught me was that he said he used to, he would go out and visit this eagle. This eagle's name was Freedom, every Sunday. And so one Sunday he didn't go out there. And then the next week when he came out, the eagle Freedom was really pissed off at him. Wouldn't would turn away from him, wouldn't look at him. So one of the Native Americans there told him, well, you need to send her a mental postcard. And he's going, what? Mental postcard? He says, yeah, when you're away and something comes up, you just kind of think about him, tell him that you're okay, that everything's good and you'll be back the next week and not to worry. And he said, once he started doing that, she never got mad at him again. And another person did the same thing with that eagle, with their eagle, and had the same experience. I've had maybe 2 or 3 experiences where I was home down in California, and all of a sudden I got this feeling that there was something terribly wrong with the eagles up here in Point Roberts. And I didn't know what it was. I just had this terrible feeling and it wouldn't go away. So I told my wife, I got to go up there. So I got on a plane and flew up, and I went out by that nest I showed you earlier, and there was a dead juvenile eagle there. And that was the first time I'd ever come across a dead eagle. It was really quite moving. Another time, the iris, the juvenile I just showed you, came in my dream, and she was flying above the low tide, at low tide, right in front of my house, and the water was like ankle deep. And a week later, I went up there, and I had said to my wife, it's really weird. I've never found an eagle feather. I thought it's really weird that all these eagles, you'd think I would have found an eagle feather. And I looked down on the sandbar, and there was iris down on the sandbar. So I walked out there to take some pictures of her. And then we started walking back, and the tide came in. And so the water was over and she kept moving. And so kept moving me to this one area. And as I'm walking back, I looked down, and there floating in the water was one of her flight feathers. And I got back home and I looked at the pictures I took of her, and I saw that the one flight feather was missing out of her wing, and I knew it was hers. And so I've had a number of things. I moved to a new house here in Point Roberts, and we have this big fir tree in our backyard. And I had a dream that an eagle was sitting in that tree. And 2 days later, I go outside, and there was an eagle sitting right on the exact same branch that was as in my dream. And so those things happen to me a couple times a year. And so that's why I say eagles are uncanny, and they're able to read our thoughts. And when I talk to essentially the Native Americans, they say that's how they get inside you. They can, and so and I think it's more of a intuitive thing. It comes from the intuitive side of your brain. It's not, you don't get a full like words or a sentence. You get kind of a thought that you receive. And anyway, they've also proven to me they know what I'm thinking several times. But that's something that's part of my research, and part of the video series that I'll be coming out with will go into that in more depth. This is the eagle Freedom that I was telling you about. That was a captive eagle. So I'm like only 3 feet away from her to get this picture. She's amazing spirit these birds have when you get up close to them. And this is the dead eagle I found, and it was holding a rock in its hand, in its talon. And I still have that rock to this day. But sadly, only about 25% of juvenile eagles make it to adulthood at 5 years. So if you ever see an eagle that's on the ground, is wounded, or you see a dead eagle, the best thing to do is to call OWL, and they'll come pick it up, and they'll analyze it to see if it was poisoned or anything like that. And then they give the feathers to the First Nations if they're salvageable. And of course, eagles go way back to Greek and Roman times. I mean, I named Iris because she was a messenger in the Homer's book, the Iliad, and Zeus would send an eagle as a messenger to people down on Earth. And of course, Native Americans, First Nations believe eagles are a messenger to God. And, you know, we probably look at that and think it's quaint, but, you know, there is something there. Eagles have a presence about them. And I was watching this documentary on the Congo, and there's eagles in the Congo also. And the natives there also thought the eagle was a messenger to God. So 3 different groups of people in 3 different parts of the world all came to the same conclusion. And but you know, we're all connected spiritually to nature, and I think that's a part of birding and going out in the wild, is you're reconnecting with your past. That, you know, all those instincts and thoughts and feelings atrophy because we're in the big city, we're removed from nature, and they're out of our mind. And so I really think it's beneficial to go out and reconnect with animals. And for me, it was eagles, but, you know, for you, it could be an orca, or it could be ducks, or any bird or animal that speaks to you in some way. And so I think it's really important that we try to push that spirituality. So these are eagles. They're just relaxing. And typically this 80% of the time you see eagles, this is what they're going to be doing. And this goes back to what I told you earlier. They only have 28 minutes a day where they can fly. So when they're not flying, they need to be a safe, secure place where they don't have to worry about people walking up on them. And so that's why Point Roberts is such a critical habitat for them. And, you know, I'd like to see some type of tree planting program along Boundary Bay. You know, they have that band of road between the freeway and the water that they could easily put trees in there, you know, not solid tree, but stands of trees. And that's all eagles need, is a stand of trees. And eventually it'll be a place where an eagle can hang out and be safe. This is the guy I told you about, Jeff Guidry, and his eagle Freedom. And this is at a powwow. And he holds this eagle on its arm, and it just stays calm and walks around all these people. It was really amazing. And you really see the power these birds have when you see the way people react around them. And the most thing is, people don't realize how big an eagle is. I mean, they stand like 3 feet tall. They have 7-foot wingspans. Their eyes are probably 70% the size of human eyes. And they don't have, our eyes have muscles that make our eyes move side to side. Well, eagles don't have that. They have telescoping eyes. So they have like kind of like a foil lens. They have lens, their muscles move the lens in and out. And so they can zoom in and out their view. But they can't turn their eyes. That's why they turn their head a lot, and why they're able to turn their head almost completely backwards, because that's the only way they can see. So in Washington, we have started in 2007, the Puget Sound Partnership. And they're basically like a specialty government agency in addition to Fish and Wildlife, the state and local level, in addition to all the environmental laws. And their goal was to clean up the sound by 2020 and to restore the salmon, to get the orca population up to 95 whales. And unfortunately, you know, just like the orca task force that met a couple years ago, they come up with all these recommendations and all this stuff, and then it only gets funded 20%. And so every single goal they made, they failed. And not only did they not make it better, they declined. And so here you see endangered species went from 1/3, they were 60 back in the early 2000s. And then now they've gone up to 124. And now they put out this greenwash propaganda. Together we're protecting the largest estuary. Well, no, they're not. And there's a lot of us out there that are very frustrated with the lack of effort to restore and protect the habitat we've destroyed. I mean, it's as simple as that, you know, that you remove the habitat, you're removing the animals because you're taking away their home. So eagles, what's happening now with eagles is, you know, they were gone for 70 years. And now they've come back. Well, now they've reached carrying capacity. In other words, there's very few, if any, new places for them to nest, or they're nesting in undesirable places. Like you mentioned, Colin, that you went to the Shell station.
Yeah.
Well, they built a nest right by that Shell station, and last spring, on the way to the nest, they flew by the power lines there, and the female was electrocuted and died.
Oh, no.
And so the other thing that's happening is now all the juvenile eagles become adults. They have no new territory to go to. So they're fighting existing adults to try to take over their territory. So we're seeing a lot of fights. And that's the eagle I just rescued a couple weeks ago. That's what happened to her. She got in a territory fight. And so we're only at 20% of historic population. So 80% of their traditional habitat has been removed. And if you remember that map I showed you of the Fraser Valley, all the trees that are gone, that's all areas that they can't really survive and nest in. So when people say, oh, we need to preserve this forest, or we need to preserve this shoreline, that's why we're doing that, because we're protecting the habitat they need to do the normal life functions that they need to survive. And of course, all the fish populations crashing is putting a stress on the eagles too, because now they have to go after the water birds more, or to search the drainage ditches and take more chances inland, because there's not enough fish for all the eagles. And that's why it used to be at Brackendale, all the winter eagles would go there. Well, about in 2010, the salmon runs crashed all along here. And it's estimated that maybe as much as 10,000 eagles died of starvation that year. And that's the reason why they go to the landfill and the fertilizer factories, because they know there's food there. So what happens is the gulls and the crows dig through the trash, and when they pull out a piece of meat too big for them to eat, the eagle goes in and he'll take it. And so I tell people think it's real exciting that all these eagles are around, but I try to tell them, well, yes, it's exciting, but it's not a good sign. It's not a good thing that eagles are eating our trash instead of out eating their normal diet of fish and waterfowl. Let's see how we doing on time. Wow. I have to apologize. I get going on this. I just go on and on. Let me see if I can find the one with some video. That's this one. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm going to show you some flying videos now. And keep in mind that I'm standing on the beach and then most of them are flying to me. I'm the only one on the beach. And if there were any other people around, these scenes wouldn't happen. And what eagles do is when they get to know you, this is how they greet you. They come and they fly over your head and circle over your head. That's their way of saying hello.
Wow.
And this eagle here, a friend of mine found this eagle hiding in a bush one day and fed it for a couple weeks. It was injured and she came and fed it every day and kept it alive. And now this eagle remembers her. So when she comes down the beach, she still brings this eagle food and feeds her. And this is what's going on here. And so you'll see that this eagle obviously knows this as it flies right up to us. There goes its mate behind it. That's done eating. It's time to go fly back to wherever. Here's one sitting on top of a tree, just looking down, saying hello. Now, what these eagles are doing here, they're soaring. In other words, there's enough wind that they just stick their wings out and they're riding the wind like a kite. And they don't use any energy when they do this. And that's why the southern shore and eastern shore of Point Roberts is so great eagle habitat, because it enables them to fly around and not have to expend energy. The height they fly at depends on where the most airflow is. Sometimes it's 50 feet off the ground. Other times it might be a couple hundred feet. Here they're so high in the sky, you can barely see them. So I zoom in to get a better shot of them. Oh, okay. So there's no people on the ground below them. There's nobody on the beach. So they feel secure to come out and fly around like this. They do a lot of aerial, like play combat. They do barrel rolls and different moves, and they're basically just playing. Also at night when they fly like this, it's a territorial thing. All these eagles are saying, this is our territory. And so if there's any transient eagles around there, it lets them know to stay away. These eagles all know each other. They're all neighbors or neighbors' fledglings. And they fly in the same airspace every day. And you see this juvenile's coming up really close to me because he knows me. The juveniles and females are the most, I guess, social eagles. The males are a lot more standoffish. It takes a lot for them to come up and fly close to you. And here's above, and I'm just sitting in one spot and I wait for the eagles to come to me. and they eventually come over and they fly around me. I mean, they're so close. Some of these, this is shot with my iPhone. I went out and bought a $7,000 camera, and some of my best footage I've gotten with my iPhone because I don't always go out with it. As far as photographing eagles, they're very, very difficult to photograph. You want to do a shutter speed around 2000. You got to really watch the white balance and really, because they have white heads and dark bodies, it's easy to overexpose their heads. So you got to really, really stop down and you know, get the lowest light possible. This is a nest in a windstorm. So these nests, you know, are like 3 feet across, and they bring grass and feathers, and they eventually get real heavy, and that's what enables them to survive the windstorms. Here's a typical scene where people are walking on the beach, and you look on the outer sandbar, the eagles are out there. And this is how you want to go past eagles. Don't stop and turn and stare at them. Just keep walking by like you're walking and just glance over at them. You know, if you have a camera, turn and take a picture and then keep moving. And that keeps them relaxed. So like I said, they'll take turns and they'll spend 5 minutes going out and flying around playing. And most of this happens towards the end of the day when they know they don't need to save any more energy for hunting or food. So this is a day, as soon as I stepped outside, Talia flew by, and then she comes back and she has a branch in her talon, and she was showing me that she was building a new nest. And right there, she's only maybe 10 feet from me. I shot this with my iPad.
Wow. Wow.
And this is one of the adults coming over to say hello to me, lands in the tree right above me. What I had done is I walked past the nest. I don't pay any attention to it. Then when I get about 200-300 yards past it, then I'll stop. And then she came over. Here we have some juveniles out in the shallow water looking for fish, playing. And then here we have one of the adults chasing an intruder out of her territory. You can hear her wings when they fly right over. So I turned back to see what the juveniles out there are doing. And then the adult who just chased the other eagle out comes back and starts yakking at me. And I turn around and she's up in the tree. You can see her up in that tall tree there. And then this is Talia sitting on a pole, and this is Heckle and Jekyll, the raven pair, dive bombing her. And eagles, they don't kill the adults. They eat the baby crows and ravens when they're get on the branches. And so that's why you always see them harassing eagles, because eagles will come eat their young. And this is one of the things I've learned about eagles, how they're different than humans, in that eagles understand that if they kill the parents, then there'll be no more babies, and so no more food source. So they don't kill the parents, they kill the babies. And conversely, if someone's threatening them, they'll protect their young. But if they become in danger, then they will change and save themselves, because they too know that if they died, there won't be any more babies. So that's where they're a little different than us. You know, we'll sacrifice ourselves for our children. They won't, because they know they have to survive to be able to make more babies. So anyway, at this point, I guess I'll open it up to questions.